Social 50.
The WRC series have always been a no-no for me. Having tried 2 or 3 different WRC games during the lengthy existence of the series, in my eyes they have always been mediocre titles, lacking in driving physics, lacking in sense of speed, having weird controls, unintuitive UI, poor sound and visuals. Miserable experiences that could never get more than an hour of playtime out of me. For some reason I had this game in my try it out, maybe, list. I went into the Steam store page recently, looked for the thing and noticed that it doesn't show the price for the game. Oh well, sometimes services have glitches. I go into the actual store page and it says planned release date September 2020. What? I'm absolutely positive that it should be out already. Ah, fuck. Yep, they've signed a year-long Epic Games Store exclusive deal, coming to Steam a whole year later. And I have already seen posts about them planning to release WRC 9 on September 2020. So, WRC 8 on Steam in September 2020, plus WRC 9 on Epic Games Store in September 2020 as well. Makes me wonder, when was the last time they went and fucked themselves? And now I've also finally gone through the Epic Games Store experience. Oh boy, reminds me of the older WRC games. There has been a lot of buzz that WRC 8 is a completely different animal compared to the previous entries. And even though it's not out on Steam yet, the discussions are already active, with people talking about it and opinions differ. But that's okay, nothing ever appeals to everyone. Initially, I noticed a pattern of pro-WRC commenters going completely mental against the game's naysayers, which created this false sense of tribalism in my eyes. When I decided to hunt some of these comments down to use as an example in here, it turned out that for the most part they all were written by 1 or 2 sources. So as far as I know, the WRC community is pretty alright, but a single elitist weirdo nearly ruined it for me. I really don't like to use the word king. We're not talking about video cards. We're not talking about actual cars. There's no such thing as objectively the best game out there. It's impossible to measure. It's a piece of entertainment, it creates emotions, it doesn't provide non-biased data. So the term, the new Rally King, is completely stupid and irrelevant. Anyone using it should stop. Nobody should take such a term seriously, and I sure as hell won't be using it here. And even if it was a thing, WRC 8 isn't it. And it also isn't the other one. It just doesn't matter. People compare this to Dirt Rally 2.0. These 2 games are considered as rivaling each other, which is perfectly understandable. Although, this comparison doesn't apply to me. I played the original Dirt Rally to death, so that when Dirt 2.0 came out, after briefly trying it out, I noticed that the driving model is different enough that I don't want to bother mastering it. So I never got seriously into Dirt 2.0, up until today. Also, Dirt Rally 2.0 symbolizes what happens when a developer gets greedy. So I'll be briefly referencing the original Dirt Rally and not Dirt 2.0, because the full Dirt Rally 2.0 experience on April the 6th would cost you €13.99 for the shell of the game and €115.42 for the rest of it. And that's with a discount. So Codemasters got greedy. I'm not surprised at all. WRC also shows its money-hungry teeth. WRC 5, 6 and 7 cost $39.99 on Steam, which is Activision level of resisting to drop prices. These games cannot be doing so well that they keep such price tags up. Also, WRC 8 has multiple paid DLCs, where an extra vehicle would cost you $3.99. And since I'm referencing the original Dirt Rally, that game included these cars post-launch for free, motherfucker. It was an extremely rocky start with the WRC 8. The main thing that I look for in a driving game is, does the driving mechanics and overall physics click instantly? 95% of the time, those first few moments determine my overall opinion of the whole driving model. After that comes the options, sound, graphics, UI, etc, etc. The driving mechanics did not click instantly. I felt extremely disconnected from the vehicles. WRC 8 isn't a plug-and-play experience. And I'm not talking about configuring the wheel. That's standard for pretty much any game in existence. The game requires plenty of fiddling around with the visual settings, camera sliders and force feedback settings to optimize your experience right from the start. No, not even maximize, simply for it to start being playable. I didn't find it enjoyable as it came configured stock at all. If you decide to go into the career early on, WRC 8 doesn't give you enough proper driving at the beginning and bogs your experience down with other stuff. So, if you're not sure about the game and are ready to pull the trigger and simply request a refund if it doesn't work out for you, the feeling that you're eating into those 2 hours and you still haven't figured it out is constantly in the back of your head. That's actually an issue I strongly think developers should account for, which they don't. Since people are able to just refund the games bought, the first couple of hours should be easily understandable, compact and bang on. WRC 8 isn't. Initially, it was more of a headache than an experience. And that's not related to something that people talk about in the forums. Something in the lines of, oh, you need to adjust the differential to a car before every race, make sure the tires, blah blah blah, gear ratio, suspension, dampening. No, none of that. At stock settings, WRC 8 has terrible sense of speed and is likely to leave you with a feeling that you cannot really feel your car's weight. I hadn't been playing any other rally games for a while until this, so I can rule out that my senses were used to something else. Most of these issues can be addressed by playing around with the sliders for the cockpit camera and FOV. At least for my setup, it seemed like the stock settings are totally unplayable. When driving up a hill, I couldn't see the road in front at all. Moving the seat down addressed this problem, which left me thinking if these settings should be set differently at stock. The force feedback also wasn't aggressive enough. And after the longest time, I realized that the wheel visible in the screen doesn't properly replicate what I'm doing physically. And I don't consider that it should move 1080 degrees. It cannot even do a proper 90-degree turn. I tried giving my wheel 90, 180, 360 and 1080-degree locks. Nothing could help the fact that the wheel in the game doesn't do a proper 90-degree turn. And it still drives me nuts. And since it doesn't do a proper 90 and my wheel is configured to 360, where I'm able to do 180 degrees to the left or right side, the wheel barely moves in the game, creating an additional disconnect to what you're actually doing. And this I found not fixable. I can see some people being turned off by all this customization required to get some immersion out of the game. Initially I was too. Maybe stock settings work out for some people, but I think they are horrible and do massive disservice to the game. You don't necessarily need to adjust everything just to be able to drive. You don't need to fiddle around with the diffs and adjust the suspension. I still haven't done it once. You don't take out a spanner and start tweaking your car when the weather changes in reality, now do you? A car should be drivable to an extent regardless. Tweaking is just optimizing performance to fit personal needs. But it's a simulation, it's supposed to be advanced and... No. I don't consider this a proper simulation. As far as I see it, the game itself doesn't as well. Which is fine. But it irritates me seeing people justifying everything related to physics, yet never mentioning the skill tree, the perks system and other stuff. But we'll get to that. Before I went into the career, I chose to do some free riding. The game offers you an option to enter a test driving area. It's actually a fairly large setting, with tarmac and gravel roads that give you a sense of the driving and let you get grips of the mechanics and configure your gear properly. Plus, it offers you a lot of freedom to do whatever you want. I like that a lot. The UI is sluggish and subpar, as I've experienced in other WRC entries. To rebind a command, you select that command and then move over to a different place to reassign it. It isn't enough to just click on it where it is. If you have set up your wheel and moved the keyboard and mouse away, this isn't a very optimal experience. The sliders require additional getting into and accepting, whereas most other games just let you move them as you have them highlighted. The ability to tweak force feedback, sensitivities and other stuff tends to glitch out. You can tweak as you please, then suddenly it's not available anymore. Then you realize that the game has automatically went back to keyboard mode in the settings, and even though you had custom wheel bindings and tweaks done already, you just get an option for your wheel. By choosing that, congratulations, you have selected the default force feedback settings and your custom work is gone. It sometimes forgets my 360-degree turning angle and goes back to 40. 40? Who the hell uses 40? My first impressions when driving in the testing area weren't all too pleasant. The sense of speed wasn't there, connection to the road was lacking, the steering wheel barely moved, it was a perfect formula for disaster. So I drove around a little bit and still, with half-assed settings, went into the career. This is where most of the what? Began. The career is a cluster mash of rallying, team management, crew management, extra activities, R&D, having a fake illusion that you're planning stuff, playing around with the unnecessary and totally simulation-like skill tree. The career has many interesting ideas that are conflicting with others which in contrast are complete nonsense. Career starts with doing a trial race. If you beat the time, you'll get a few teams offering you partnership contracts. Great! I'm liking this so far. I have to note that at this time I still wasn't digging the driving mechanics and wasn't enjoying myself very much. That is why I restarted the career after fixing the issues. What? Team, performance, crew... Care to explain what these mean? No? Oh well. You pick a deal and get introduced to the management section.
Manage your crew and organise your event calendar. This is the research and development area. You have one R&D point to spend. Use one to unlock the meteorologist, who...
What?
The meteorologist helps you plan the best strategy for the race by providing a weather forecast.
Why am I paying a guy that tells me what the weather's like out the window? Just Google it! It turns out that they can also be wrong. The first 3 events in the calendar is a complete waste of time and doesn't help you properly getting the grips of the game. There is a calendar where the game tries to give you an illusion that you're planning your upcoming events. The first 3 are pretty useless and have nothing to do with actual rally or meaningful practice. First 2 events are test drives where a single lap consists of a handful of turns and is about 20 seconds long, and both are boring target time beating test drives. Event number 3. You get to drive a shitty beat up car during the night with heavy rain and the road surface being all covered in... sharp stones or something. If I already had difficulty feeling how the car acts on the road, during this event, with the heavy rain and wet gravel and shit on the ground, it was impossible to drive at all. I started getting impatient, asking out loud, where's the goddamn rally? And all of this got accompanied by the tutorial lady explaining you the calendar, explaining you the skills, explaining you the crew, explaining you the email. And then you realize this is all too convoluted and unnecessary. An email that's not an addition, but something that you must actively take part in at times. Which is also a lame attempt at creating an illusion that you're managing stuff. How lame is it, you ask? Well, you can pay your bills through the email. Yep, that's what the game understands with replying to an email. You pay your bills in the conversation. Maybe when Google opens a bank of its own, they'll integrate such an option. In 2020, it seems like a corny logical error that a movie from the 90s would make when people didn't know how the internet worked yet. What's the deal with these extreme condition events? Now, this car has no brakes and has half-busted wheels. Finished the race for some reason. What? I actually have a suggestion for these extreme condition events, but more on that later. This game isn't a simulation. If you decide to check it out, you will see that word mentioned everywhere, by the developers, by some of the elitist community, and by news outlets. Check this simulation feature out! Get back on track. Oh, get back on track. I'm on it. I'm on the goddamn track. And it resets you. By sliding out of the track, your car often gets reset almost instantly. There's an extremely little room for errors. If you make an error, you get a lovely immersion breaking fade out, fade in, put back on track, let us help you out, you little baby, assist. At other times, where it's actually not possible to get out, the game lets the countdown timer to expire and only then does so. The game doesn't respect you in this regard very much. But that's not related to actual driving mechanics, they're actually true to real life. No. Check this out. I should have blown my engine. They actually use sequential shifters in real rally and the game supports H pattern. If it supports H pattern and calls itself a simulation, then let me money shift. The overall damage model is actually fairly robust overall, so where's the problem? As much as I don't consider this a full-fledged sim, it does have certain good mechanics. Let me tell you.
Let me tell you.
I don't recall ever feeling like I was driving on worn tires in Dirt Rally. They either worked, were punctured, or I was driving on bare metal. I think I may have heard that there is such a mechanic in 2.0, but I'm not sure. That's how disconnected I am with that game. In WRC 8, eventually I start noticing changes in grip, feeling like the car tends to slide out more, and in the bottom left corner you can see a nice indicator why. The bottom left corner is filled with useful information about the status of your car. It's so useful that even though I like to usually have nothing on screen, that window is just too tempting to look at. Slowly but surely I started making connection with the cars I was driving. For the longest time I didn't care. I didn't sense any danger or stakes. I remember my first steps in Dirt Rally. I instantly felt under pressure. The cars felt like they had weight and power. The mechanics made sense and I went into that game with 1000% skepticism. Dirt 3 was an absolute failure for me and I didn't trust Codemasters one bit at the time. Initially I was afraid. I was extremely hesitant to try a rear-wheel drive car. I was fine with my front-wheel drive Lancia, and when I eventually tried the rear-wheel drive Opel Kadett, I constantly felt endangered. I was actually afraid to push it. WRC 8 didn't give me a sense that there are any stakes. It required multiple rounds of fiddling around and occasionally being thrown off by the game for getting the settings. That's because Dirt is an arcade, it has artificial effects, you shut the fuck up. Every single game ever created, ever, is artificial. It's ones and zeros. WRC 8 isn't difficult to get into because it provides some distinct mechanics that casuals couldn't understand. It just isn't very friendly to figure out and asks for unnecessary effort from the player. If in Dirt Rally I cared and felt the stakes right from the start, WRC 8 made it difficult. For a while I didn't care. I didn't feel anything. As time went on, slowly but steadily things started moving into place. I started to feel the stakes. I had configured it enough that I started to care. I started to feel the pressure.
I'm not afraid.
You will be. You will be.
Into left 3 short, rock out, right 4 short, 50. Right 5 and rock out, right 4, 50.
Some of the intro background music is fine. I don't like the co-driver. I don't enjoy the line delivery and the overall voice work. I would prefer the actual cars sounding a bit more gritty and having a little bit nastier engine sound. It also can add to the immersion and believability. Although, it's the environmental sounds and the variety of ways the sound changes when you start braking your car that actually shine. Seems like they have put in some major work in this part of sound design.
40 over snow. Left 5 short, 50. Right 6, 80. Left 4 short, 50. Right 4.
I've never cared if a rally game, or a driving game in general, has breakthrough visuals. That's secondary. All I care is that it looks somewhat modern. Does it? Sure. I like the idea of the windscreen getting dusty when driving on gravel, although the fact that you can magically clean it off without leaving any kind of residue is comical. It conflicts enough that I wonder, maybe this effect was better left unused, because this magic wiping really attracts attention. That's also not very simulation. The damage model is very aggressive. You can destroy your car in a single crash, which is great. It works well technically and sometimes provides good visual justification to what's happening. And the consequences of a damaged car are much more aggressive than I've felt in Dirt Rally. WRC 8 isn't just a rally game, and it shows that early on. There are also elements of team management and a massive skill tree. Why is there a massive skill tree that's larger than something you could find in an RPG? I take issue with the calendar. When you don't have a rally event planned, you usually have a couple of options to choose from. For example, rest, which essentially means don't do anything. Do a test drive, that only gives you a little bit of XP. Do manufacturer tryouts, which is a fine activity to do. You get to drive a different car for a single stage and it boosts your relationship with that manufacturer. Or do extreme conditions. Why do these extreme conditions exist? I have no idea. There is no backstory to them. You are thrown in a random race with shit conditions and driving a beaten up car. Are you taking over a different driver that messed up in the previous stage? Who the hell knows? Probably not, because I don't see that being very realistic. Hence, this is not a simulation. Are you taking a place in a seat for a different team, similar like in Grid 1? Supposedly not. And when you have issues getting the grips of a game, to make matters worse, it throws you in these weird events where nothing makes sense. I actually have an alternative suggestion of an extreme conditions activity that would actually make some sense. It would have nothing to do with what already exists. Scrap it completely. Since this game likes to implement extra activities and tries to create more layers to the rally experience, here's an extra layer that would actually be semi-plausible. You have a warehouse where you keep the busted parts from previous rally events, half-worn and punctured wheels, broken bumpers, barely working brakes, broken windscreens, and so on. You could then choose parts from this inventory, put them on a car in the configuration you want, and do a practice run with a car that is in poor condition configured to your requests. Also, pick the kind of weather you want, and go do a practice run in that large practice area, and this would make it a worthwhile activity to do occasionally. You could practice driving with a busted vehicle by using actual parts you have broken previously. Done! An extreme conditions event that provides some logic and makes you personally invested. What you get now is you can go take a nap, which just shows that WRC8 isn't totally confident about the content it provides, do a test run that gives you no money and a peasantly amount of XP, or do some nonsensical extreme weather event that's loathsome but gives you plenty of cash. I'd rather take a nap than do extreme weather. I'll get plenty of extreme weather in my standard rally events, thank you very much. The game has several sliders you have to pay attention to. You have your bank account, XP, which pretty much just give you more skill points to spend over time, relationship with the manufacturer, a morale slider, which I'm not sure what it is, too much information to swallow and some of it is completely secondary. The country and track variety is pretty good. The car variety is restricted mostly to the official roster, plus some additional DLC content which costs extra money because F you. You have options to do your career, quick races, practice runs, online events, split-screen races. There is stuff to do. Most difficult part about WRC8 is figuring it out. For some reason, it plays hard to get. Overall, it can be a good rally experience, though the career gets smothered a bit by the overly packed RPG elements. The UI is a bit sluggish as always, and the game tends to forget your wheel settings. On the plus side, the game doesn't bother you with cutscenes and intro movies. Nothing. All the pre-menu intros can be skipped. Everything the career lady says can also be skipped, which is perfect. I did a back-to-back comparison between the stock settings and the adjusted FOV and camera angles. The difference is huge. The stock makes me feel like a granny leaning forward on the wheel. Custom camera angles is a must. I have a theory that this is actually a console port, and it makes some sort of sense. If you make a game for the console, you have to account for people sitting on the sofas, with the TV being further away than a computer monitor. This kind of FOV setting starts making some sense in those scenarios. But this is supposed to be considered a sim. Who the hell cares about sofa junkies? Epic Games Store, your refund process is shh. After filing for a refund, they send you an additional email asking for the invoice details, name of the account holder, and additional nonsense. They use a third-party service for this process without a streamlined approach. The way they ask for these details make it seem like a scammer fishing information out of you.
We scam people, but let me tell you, we provide support.
I'll start calling a rally game simulation when it starts doing this. In complete confusion about this game physics in the early stages, I got my hands on Richard Burns' Rally for the first time, since that's still considered the go-to rally sim for some people. No experience prior to this. If only I had known the mechanics that game had. If you slide out of the track, it actually gives you plenty of freedom to try and get back on your own. No pressure. If you flip your car on the side or on the roof and need to get it back, the game actually waits for your command to help you get back on the track. It doesn't treat you like an infantile idiot. It doesn't stop you flying into what eventually will ruin your race. And it has actual animations of people helping you back up. The NPCs on the side of the road interact. Developers, it's 2020. What have you been doing for the past 16 years? Those are some lovely immersive realistic elements to have. And after recently playing Forza Horizon 4, that serves as another game next to Driver San Francisco to use as an example of NPCs interacting as you approach them. Where are our proper realistic immersive experiences? The elitist gamers of today just bark at each other trying to prove who can overshout the other person by justifying that his game is better than the other. Who the fuck cares? Newsflash people, they all lack design elements long forgotten, buried in history. They would be looked at as groundbreaking and envelope pushing by a modern gamer. By the way, Richard Burns' Rally's driving model made sense instantly. No need to fiddle around with anything. Plug and play. There's a new Rally King and the name is WRC8. All you whiners are just bunch of trolls. WRC8 on PC is the new Rally King. That's not an opinion, it's a fact.
And that might sound arrogant, that might sound self-aggrandizing, and it is. Thank God for me.
Right 4, brake into left 3, tightens 2, over gravel. Right 5, 40. Left 5.
So which one's better? That's irrelevant and not possible to measure. I see WRC8 as more technical and correct, but I still get a grittier driving feel from the original Dirt Rally, which feels a bit more raw and punchy. I like them both now, and since WRC8 was such a pain in the butt in the beginning, after trying out Richard Burns' Rally, I have added that to my list as well.
Right 2, open into crest. Into brake right 4, into left 3, open. Caution. Brake, square left. Don't cut over tarmac. Hairpin right over gravel into flat left. And hairpin left.
Another thing I totally forgot. Apparently in some races you can stumble upon randomly crashed vehicles, which I thought was an interesting addition to Authenticity, although when I checked the rankings, the crashed car was nowhere to be found. This game is not a simulation.